The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone. Hi to all. So what is it saying? Assignment for yesterday is not in Google Drive. Can you look into this? I'm not sure, Subhajit, why it's so, because from my side it's been tracked. From my side it's been tracked and dropped to the folder. So you can see it's showing up as synced from my side. All right. So yesterday we had discussed Elastic Block Store and S3. We'll move further and we'll start with our first topic of this day, that is Glacier. And once we do the Glacier, we'll do Storage Gateway, Snowball, and the Storage Gateway. Okay, and if the time permits, we'll also cover the CloudFront. So we'll start with the Glacier first, and we're going to discuss that what are the advantages of the Glacier, and also it comes with certain limitations because Glacier, it's a very cost-effective storage as compared to the S3. I think it's 1/5 or 1/10 of the S3 standard storage, but yes, it comes with certain limitations or certain disadvantages. So let's discuss that. Now, what is an Amazon Glacier? An Amazon Glacier is an extremely low-cost storage service that provides secure, durable, and flexible storage for data backup and archival. So you can say that it's an extremely low-cost storage service. Okay? And we mainly use it for the archiving purpose, for the backup purpose. In the Amazon Glacier, we use something called vaults. Vault is a container for storing your archives. So vault is your container, whereas archives are the pieces of data that you store in the vaults. If you can recall, in the S3, the container is a bucket, whereas the objects are the pieces of data. So over here, the vault is your container that contains your archives, which act as your pieces of data. Now, the data is stored in the Amazon Glacier in the form of archives. So the data is being put, or it's being contained in the vaults in the form of archives. An archive is any object, such as photo, video, or document, which is stored in a vault. A single archive can be as large as 40 terabytes. So you can store, now for example, this is your vault, the Glacier vault. You can store an infinite amount of data. There's no limitation that how much archives or pieces of data you can store in this vault. However, the size of each archive should be up to 40 terabytes. Now the limitation is for the S3 was 5 terabyte, which is 1/8 of this limit. So a single archive shouldn't exceed more than 40 terabytes in size. So if you abide by this condition, you can store an infinite or unlimited amount of data in the single Glacier vault. Okay. So you can store an unlimited amount of a number of archives and an unlimited amount of data in the Amazon Glacier. So we'll shoot back to the management console. We can see the Glacier under storage and content delivery. This says archive storage in the cloud. Now, I have these vaults created, so I'll just create a new one from scratch. Now, as we have certain limitations or certain protocols to choose our name for the S3 buckets, that thing is not applicable over here. Okay, we can create anything, we can assign any name to the vault. So over here, I just name it as Adreka-vault. So once I create that, once I assign this name, I have to choose the region because the vaults that you create are specific to the region. So I already have the region created, or I would say not created, but populated before I just went to this Glacier dashboard and I had assigned this name to the vault. So once I perform the operation, we need to click on next step. And optionally, you can enable the notifications because if anything, any kind of activity happens with respect to the vault, you get notified or the email. So this is just an optional thing to go for. It's not mandatory. So right now I just go with the default settings which says do not enable the notifications. So I click on next step right now, and we can review the options as it is, but there's nothing much to review as of now. And we click submit. So this creates our vault named Adreka-vault. Now, as you can see right now, we can see the details of the vault, the notifications, permissions, and all those kind of things, but there's no space at all where we can upload or download the contents as we have in the S3 buckets. In the vault, we don't have any space or any feature that can help us to upload or download the contents. We have to use a third-party API or tool that we can integrate with the vault, and then we can access it. You can say that this is a shortcoming or a major disadvantage of the Glacier, that it does not come with a feature or the capability where you can upload or download your content. That capability is not available on the vaults on your management console. And also the major second disadvantage of the Glacier is that it has a very high retrieval time. The retrieval time is far beyond than what you should expect. So what the Amazon Web Services say is that if you want to retrieve if you want to retrieve, let me just remove this drawing. The Amazon Web Services says that if you want to retrieve 1 GB of data, retrieving means that, for example, if this is your vault and you want to retrieve the data back to your PC or to your local machine from the vault back to the computer, this retrieval time is extremely high, which means to retrieve 1 GB of data, even to initiate the process of retrieving, it can take between 1 to 4 hours. So you can say that the retrieval time is extremely high. If you want to retrieve the data back from the Glacier to your PC or the local machine, the process to initiate that retrieving will scale, or it will take between 1 to 4 hours, which is quite, I would say, unexpected, unacceptable. That's why we say that the Glacier is only used for the archiving purpose, only for the archiving. We just put the data to the vault and we forget that for weeks, for months, or for years as well. So it's purely used for the archiving purpose. You will only store the data that you don't access frequently. plain and simple. Because it is 1/5 or 1/10 of the cost of your storage of the S3, so it's extremely cost-effective storage option. So it is just used for archiving purpose. So these are the two major disadvantages. First thing, the retrieval time is extremely high. The second is that you don't get too much features as you get with the S3, because it is not as much robust, as much feature oriented as compared to the S3. That's why it is cost effective, or it's economical. Okay. Now you can download some of the API tools free from the Google. If you just go to Google and just type in Cloudberry Lab, the first one says cloudberrylab.com. You can download the freeware so that that software can be used to be integrated with the vaults, and you can save your content or you can retrieve the content through this console. Now if you just go to this cloudberrylab.com, let me just copy and paste this link for you. And if you just go to, let's suppose, go to products, and I think it should be somewhere for Amazon Glacier over here. So you can just download the freeware. You don't get so many features as you compare with this Pro one, but still you can see that how to upload or download the content. Now this is just for the Windows. For the Windows guys, this is the best option to go for if you want to integrate any third-party API tool like this with your Glacier Vault. So the supported OS is Windows 7 or higher, or Windows Server 2008 or higher. Okay. For the people who are using Mac OS X, you have to go for, or you can go for arcbackup.com. This one. So it is also available for Windows, but for the Mac we don't have too many options, so you can go for this one. It is not that much robust as compared to the Cloudberry Explorer, but still you can use that. So let me just copy this link for you and paste it on the chat window. Okay. Now I have this Cloudberry Explorer downloaded on my Windows virtual machine. Let me show you. Just give me a second, please. Alright, so we are on Windows right now, and if we just let me see if I have the software downloaded or not. I think I downloaded the software. Hang on one second. Hang on one second, please. Not sure because it was there. Might be because I'm using too many virtual machines over here. Hang on one second. I think let me just zoom in program files. Anyhow, it's a very simple software to use, where you just get a console to upload the contents from a machine to your this Cloudberry Explorer. I'm not sure because it was there before. Hang on a second, please. Might be I removed the software by mistake. I think I don't have the software. So anyhow, let's try it again. I will show you if I have the software downloaded sometime, because it's not that much essential. It is just that you have to download the software and integrate that with your vault. Now, one thing you have to keep in mind that before you integrate this Cloudberry Lab, it will ask for the access key ID and the secret access key ID. Now, how you can get that? If you can recall, we got the access key ID or the secret access key ID through the IAM. It stands for this Identity and Access Management. So we just go over there. We can click on delete your root access keys. Over here, this is the IAM dashboard. And we click on manage security credentials. And over here, under the access keys, you can create a new one. You can just click on create new access key. And this is the access key ID and the secret access key ID that you can you need to copy and paste, because once you download any kind of third-party software to integrate with your AWS account, then you have to type in this access key ID and the secret access key ID. So once you download the Cloudberry Lab or Arc Backup, you have to type in the access key ID and the secret access key ID so that your software can make the API calls to your vaults at the back end. Okay, so this is a mandatory thing for you to enable the Cloudberry Lab or the backup, because you have to input these values over there. Okay, once you're done, then you're good to go. Right. So that's about the Glacier. So Glacier is a very cost-effective storage solution that helps you to back up or archive your data that you don't access frequently. The retrieval time is too much high, but you don't get, and also you don't get too many features that you get with the S3. So it's purely used for the archiving purpose, and you have to integrate with a third-party API tool or software to upload and download your content. Okay, so nothing much about the Glacier. Any questions, any doubts? I wish if I had the software downloaded, I would have shown you, but unfortunately I'm not sure how it got removed from my Windows PC. Any questions regarding the Glacier? Kamesh is saying, is it under the free tier account? Yes, Kamesh, it comes under the free tier. But I think, I guess you can have certain GB of data, 1 or 2 GB of data that you can use. But you can use that under the free tier. Okay. Let's discuss our next storage option, that is Snowball. Now, Snowball is a very, I would say, effective, and I would say it was one of the best methods if you want to migrate your huge amount of data from your data center to the cloud, which means Amazon Web Services Cloud, and also you can retrieve the data back and forth from the AWS data centers towards your own data center. So let's discuss that. So AWS Import Export Snowball. Snowball is a petabyte scale data transport solution that uses secure appliances to transfer large amounts of data in and out of the AWS. So Snowball, you can say it's a data storage solution or data transport solution if you want to transfer large amounts of data in and out of your Amazon Web Services cloud. Snowball addresses common challenges with large-scale data transfers, including high network costs, long transfer times, and the security concerns. Transferring data with Snowball is simple, fast, secure, and can be as little as 1/5 the cost of the high-speed internet. Now, let's take an example. Let's suppose that you want to transfer, let's go back again. This is your data center. This is your own data center. And you decide that you want to migrate your entire infrastructure from your data center to the Amazon Web Services cloud. Now, let's suppose that you have gone with a 100 Mbps dedicated link between the AWS cloud and your data center. Okay, 100 Mbps link. Now you decide that you want to transfer over 100 terabytes of data, 100 TB of data over this 100 Mbps link from your data center to the Amazon Web Services cloud. Now, even if you are going with 100 terabyte of data to be transferred over the 100 Mbps link, on an average you can transfer 1 terabyte of data for each single day, which means for 100 terabytes it will take you about 100 days to transfer this entire content from your data center to the Amazon Web Services cloud. This means that if this data is more than 100 terabytes, it will take more time. It's a big challenge that if you want to migrate such a huge amount of data, it will take a good amount of time, and also you have to pay a high amount of charges to the service provider. So as a solution, what the Amazon Web Services says that you can raise a request with us. That request is called job. You request a job with us, and if there's availability for your region, we're gonna transport this Snowball appliance to you. Now, this Snowball appliance is a kind of, you can say, a hard drive that's being embedded into this kind of rubberized suitcase. So the Amazon Web Services will send across this Snowball appliance to your place, and you will transfer. Once you get the Snowball appliance, you will hook it up to your local network, and you transfer the entire stuff into the Snowball appliance. Now, each Snowball appliance can carry up to 52 terabytes of data. So once you upload up to 50 terabytes of data to the Snowball appliance, you will ship it back to the AWS data center. And the Amazon Web Services engineers will transfer this entire content from the Snowball appliance to the S3 bucket on your behalf. So the procedure that used to take 100 days, it can be completed between 3 to 5 days, including the shipping days. So that 100 days would be converted, or it will be you can bring it down to 3 to 5 days, including shipping, and it will about 1/5 of the cost if you compare that with the data transfer rates if you go with the previous option. So this will take less time and less cost. So these appliances are called the Snowball appliances that the AWS, they ship it over to our data destinations or the data centers. Now let's see that the flow, that how exactly this works. First thing first, you have to create something called job. What's a job? A job is nothing more than a form that you need to fill out. So there are two types of jobs that you need to fill out. Whether you want to import the data or you want to export the data. These are the two types of jobs that you can choose for or you can go for. If you go for import the data, which means you can migrate the data from your data center and import it to S3 bucket. Export means that you can take out the data from the S3 bucket and export it to your data center. So we just go back to the YAML console. And we're going to get started on this main page. It says plan your job. The first one is import into Amazon S3, which means AWS will ship an empty snowball to you. You transfer your data into it and ship it back. After the AWS gets the snowball, your data will be transferred or will be moved into the S3 on your behalf. That's called the import. If I go with the export kind of option, then I will choose the data that I want to export from the S3 to the buckets, from the S3 buckets. The Amazon Web Services will load that data onto a Snowball appliance and will ship it back to us. Then we can transfer the data from the Snowball and ship that Snowball appliance back to the Amazon Web Services data center. So these are the two types of jobs that you can go for. So as if I just go to import to Amazon S3 job, I click on next, and this is the entire form that you need to fill out. Your name, your company address, your company name, zip code, country, and everything. And also you have to go whether you are going for a 1-day shipping or a 2-day shipping. So you have to pay for the shipping charges as well. Okay. We'll see that how it's being built. Okay. So once the Amazon Web Services, once we create a job, let's suppose we create an import job. In that very case, I'm sorry, hang on one second. We create an import job. In that very case, the Amazon Web Services will ship the Snowball appliance to our data center. We have to connect that Snowball appliance onto a local network. So we have to assign an IP address that can be either assigned manually or we can have the IP address assigned via DHCP. So once we are able to connect the Snowball appliance to a local network, we can copy over the entire content to the Snowball appliance. So once we copy over that entire content, we can ship it back to the AWS data center, and the Amazon Web Services engineers will copy over the entire content from the Snowball appliance to the designated S3 buckets on our behalf. And we will be notified over the SMS or over the text messaging. So this is how this entire job is being completed. Okay. Now, what are the benefits you get out of it? First thing first, it's extremely scalable. And it facilitates the high speed of the data transfer in and out to AWS Cloud. It is temporal resistant and secure. Now, the question may be asked, what about the data security? Because our data will be transferred in and out using these appliances. What if these appliances get stolen or someone tampers around and steal and is able to retrieve the data? So if we just go, let me just go to the next slide. This is how the entire Snowball appliance looks like. It is temper resistant, it is rain and dust resistant, and all the data that you store onto the Snowball appliance it gets encrypted through the key management service or the KMS. So you will have that key. So even if someone is able to, I would say, steal this entire Snowball appliance, you can't use that data because it's being entirely encrypted, and the encryption key is either with you or with the Amazon Web Services. So you are guaranteed both the physical and the data security. Also, it is simple and compatible. It facilitates low cost of your data transfers and easy data retrieval. Now you can retrieve the data back from the S3 buckets to your data centers. Now, what are the common use cases where you may use this import-export Snowball option? The first use case is cloud migration. Now, if you have large quantities of data that you need to migrate into AWS, the Snowball is often much faster and more cost-effective than transferring the data over the internet. So if you want to migrate your entire data from your data center to the Amazon Web Services cloud, this is the best option. Disaster recovery. In the event that you need to quickly retrieve a large quantity of data stored in Amazon S3, Snowball appliances can help retrieve the data much quicker than high-speed internet. Data center decommission. So Snowball can help you ensure that your data is securely and cost-effectively transferred to the AWS during this process. So in the event if you want to decommission or shut down your entire data center, in that very case you can quickly and effectively transfer your data. Content distribution. You can use the Snowball appliances if you regularly receive or need to share the large amounts of data with the clients, customers, or business associates. Snowball appliances can be sent directly from the AWS to the client or the customer locations. So if you want to distribute the large quantities of content to your clients, then you can have the AWS to export the data from the S3 to the Snowball appliances and ship the Snowball appliances to any one of your clients. So you can share the large quantities of data with your clients through this Snowball appliances. You can distribute your entire content. What about the pricing details? Each job will cost you $200 US. Irrespective of the fact how many appliances are being shipped to you, it doesn't matter, but the service fee per job is $200 US. Extra day charge. Now you've been charged, so for the first 10 days of on-site usage, it's free, and each extra on-site day costs you $15 US. Data transfer. If you go for an import option, which means if you want to transfer the data from your data center to the Amazon S3 bucket, the data transfer rate is nil. It will not cost you even a single penny. However, if you transfer the data out from the Amazon S3, it will cost you $0.03 per gigabyte. Shipping. The shipping charges are calculated based upon the standard carrier rates for the shipping location and shipping option. So 2 days overnight you can choose. The default shipping option is 2 days. Amazon S3 charges. So the standard Amazon S3 storage and the request pricing applies. So it's quite obvious that if you go with the import option, and if you import large quantities of data to the Amazon S3 buckets, you have to pay for the standard S3 charges. So these are the pricing details of your import-export Snowball. Any questions, any doubts regarding this concept? Now, Snowball appliances are not supported, I would say, in all regions, but in few of the regions you can leverage this service. Any questions, any doubts? I'm just pausing for a few seconds just in case you have any questions. Okay, Kamish is saying during transportation, if something happens to data, how can we get? Kamish, I would say that it is highly recommended that you copy over the data, not just transfer it out and wipe it from your local data center. Just copy over the data and ship it across to the Amazon Web Services S3 buckets. Once the data is being copied over from the Snowball appliances to the S3 bucket, then you can remove the duplicate copy from your data center. Okay, just to be on safer side. Kuram is saying, can you explain once again how the encryption works over this device? Kuram, what happens is we use the concept of KMS or Key Management Service. We will discuss that once we cover this IAM, Identity and Access Management. We use the keys to encrypt our data. So why we use this Snowball appliance? Let's suppose that we have, let me just open this diagram. So what happens is that we have the keys. Once we cover the KMS, I will explain you in detail. In the key management service, we use either the default master keys, or we have something called CMK, that stands for customer master key. Now, whenever we transfer the data, let's suppose this is our PC in our local data center, and this is our Snowball appliance. Now, while we transfer the data to the Snowball appliance, we can use these keys, either default keys or the customer master key, to encrypt our data. Okay, so the entire data gets encrypted. Now, since we own these keys, we can only decrypt the same data. Okay, if you can recall, we use the same key. I'm sorry. We use the same key to encrypt our data to our, I would say, encrypt our EBS volume. So if let's go back to our EBS. Okay, so we just go back to the volumes right now. Now, whenever we create our volumes from scratch, we get this encryption, encrypt this volume. The same technology is being used. This is the default master key. So once, while we create the volume, we get this option to encrypt this data. Because once we encrypt our volume using this default master key, our entire data will be encrypted. You will get the same option while transferring the data from your local data center to the Snowball appliance. You can use the same key to encrypt each bit of data that's been saved onto your Snowball appliance. Okay. So once we discuss the KMS, I will show you that how you can create your own customer master keys. All right. Venkat, your question is where will the data will be deposited on AWS? Venkat, it will be deposited to the S3. Yes. So you have to notify the engineers that this is your S3 bucket, and they will transfer over the data to the designated S3 buckets of your choice. So you will own that bucket, and the data will be transferred to that same bucket on your behalf. All right. Coram, your question is, does each customer has dedicated Snowball device? No. Or devices shared between different customers? Coram, there is no concept called dedicated or shared Snowball devices. Actually, what happens is that it all depends upon the demand. If a customer asks for the Snowball appliances, it's been shipped to him. Once the data is being shipped back to the AWS and being transferred to the S3 packets, the entire data is being wiped out from the Snowball appliance, and it can be shipped to any other customer who is asking for it. So you can say it's a shared thing. So based upon the demand, it's been transported or being shipped to the customers. AWS Storage Gateway. Now, AWS Storage Gateway connects an on-premises software appliance with a cloud-based storage to provide seamless integration with data security features between your on-premises IT environment and the Amazon Web Services storage infrastructure. So if you want to somehow merge your existing storage infrastructure in your own data center with the Amazon Web Services cloud storage infrastructure, then Storage Gateway is the best option. It offers you both volume-based and the tape-based storage solutions. Now we have something called volume gateways. Volume gateways, it provides the cloud-based storage volumes that you can mount as ISCA devices from your on-premises application servers. Volume gateways are two types: gateway cache volumes. Over here, the majority of the data is being saved in the Amazon S3 bucket, whereas we retain a copy of the frequently accessed data locally. So if you go with the volume gateways, or the gateway cache volume, I would say that, in that very case, the majority of the data is being saved in the S3 bucket, whereas the frequently accessed data is being saved locally in our data center. Okay, and it also it offers a substantial cost savings on the primary storage and minimize the scale of your storage on premises. The next category is called gateway stored volumes. Over here, the entire data set is being saved to our local data center, whereas we use the S3 buckets just to store our backups in the form of snapshots. Also, we have Gateway Virtual Tape Library, or VTL. So you can cost effectively and durably archive the backup data in the Amazon Glacier Gateway VTL that provides a virtual tape infrastructure that scales seamlessly with your business needs and eliminates the operational burden of provisioning, scaling, and maintaining a physical tape infrastructure. Now, this is a diagram of the gateway cache volume architecture. Now, this works in such a way that this is your data center, this one, and this is your AWS storage infrastructure. You deploy this thing called Storage Gateway. This Storage Gateway is a virtual machine that you can run in the premises of your own data center upon a physical host, or it can be launched on an EC2 instance. This storage gateway contains two different components, cache storage and upload buffer. Now what happens is that whenever the users or the application server runs a data to the storage gateway, the cache storage retains the frequently accessed data, whereas the upload buffer that acts as a staging area push the entire content to your S3. And this entire content is being stored in the form of volume blocks. Okay, so you push your entire content to your S3 buckets or the S3 in the form of block volumes, and you can create a copy or the snapshots of these volumes just to create the backup. The cache storage contains your frequently accessed data. Now let's suppose that if this application server wants to retrieve the data, it will look for the cache storage. If the cache storage has that frequently accessed data, it will give it back to the application server residing inside your data center. If the data is not in the cache storage, then the application server can retrieve the data from the volume storage in your Amazon S3. So you merge your existing storage infrastructure with the Amazon S3. Now the cache storage and the upload buffer are being carved out from your local storage, whether it's a SAN, NAS, or disk attached storage. All right. So you can see over here, the S3 acts as a primary storage, whereas the storage gateway that contains your cache storage or cache buffer, it retains the frequently accessed data locally. Now this minimizes the need for you to scale your on-premises storage infrastructure. It provides the applications with low latency access to their frequently accessed data. Storage volumes up to 32 terabytes are created, and they're attached or mounted as ASCII devices, which stands for Internet Small Computer Interface Devices, from your on-premises application servers. The volume gateway stores the data that you write to these volumes in S3 and retains the recently read data in your on-premises storage gateways, cache and upload buffered storage. The storage gateway stores all the on-premises application data in a storage volume in S3. So after the installation and the activation of the storage gateway appliance, which is a virtual machine stored on a host in your data center, you provision the storage volumes that are backed by the S3 using the Maven console. So the entire data is being saved in your S3 volumes, whereas the frequently accessed data is being retained in the storage gateway in your own local data center. All right. Now we have a second category that's called the gateway stored volume architecture. Now this is quite opposite as compared to the previous deployment that we have seen, which is the gateway's cached volume architecture. Over here, the entire content stays in our own data center, whereas we use the S3 just for the backup of our content in the form of snapshots. So this volume storage, whenever the application server writes the data, it writes the data to the volume storage, and the volume storage writes the data to the storage attached network or disk attached storage. And if this application server wants to retrieve the data, the volume storage will pull back the data from here and will give it to the application server. And this upload buffer will copy over the backup in the form of snapshots to your S3. Okay, so this is opposite to your gateway cached volume architecture. Over here, the entire content stays into your data center, whereas you create the backups. Now it will create the backups synchronously to your S3 bucket. So the primary data stays into your local or on-premises. The data is asynchronously backed up to S3. It provides to on-premises applications with low latency access to the entire data sets while providing the durable offset backups. You can create the storage volumes and mount them as ISCA devices from your on-premises application servers. Data written to your gateway store volumes is stored on your on-premises storage hardware. So the entire data is being stored in your disk attached storage, SAN or NAS over here. Okay. The data is asynchronously backed up to your Amazon S3 in the form of EBS snapshots. After you have installed the storage gateway software appliance, that's a virtual machine installed on a host in your data center, and you activated it, you create the gateway storage volumes and map them to the on-premises disk attached storage or storage attached network disks. As your on-premises applications write data to and read data from a storage gateway volume, this data is stored and retrieved from the volumes assigned disk. Okay. The third category is called the Gateway VTL or the Gateway Virtual Tape Library. We have a virtual tape over here which is analogous to a physical tape cartridge. The virtual tape data is stored in the AWS cloud. We have a virtual tape library that's a collection of the virtual tapes stored in the library. We have the tape drives, which is analogous to a physical tape drive that can perform the I/O and seek operations to a tape. We have a media changer, which is analogous to a robot that moves the tapes around a physical tape library, stores slots and tape drives. And also we have a virtual tape shelf so that we can store our data to the Glacier. So we just go back to the diagram. We have this storage gateway. This is a virtual tape drive. Okay, this tape drive writes the data to the virtual tapes that are backed by the S3. The media changer uploads or offloads the virtual tapes while the backup application writes the data, or the tape drive writes the data to the virtual tapes that are being backed up by the S3. And also you can archive your virtual tapes to the Glacier in the form of virtual tape shelf. Okay. Right. So this is about the storage gateway. The storage gateway, you need to merge that with your existing data center infrastructure. Manjunath, your question is how to restore these. Yeah, Manjunath, if you want to restore that, you have the snapshots. Either you can restore the snapshots back to your, I would say that, for example, if you have the snapshots created over here, if you want to restore that to your S3 bucket in the form of volumes, then you can do that very quickly. But if you want to restore it back, in that case, it will be done over the link. And of course, it will take some time. So that's why you have two types of architectures. If you go with a gateway stored volume, you keep your entire data onto your data center, while you just have the S3 just for the backups. If you think that you have to restore a large amount of data from the Amazon S3 bucket to your data center on frequently basis, then you'll go with the gateway stored volume architecture, because the entire data gets stored to your in-premises data center. Okay, but if you think that you don't have to frequently restore the data from the S3 bucket, then the entire data stores over here, whereas only the frequently accessed data stores in your cache storage. So it all depends upon you. If you think that you have to retrieve the large amount of data, then you have to go with the gateway store volume architecture, this one. Okay. And this entire data flow between the S3 and the this gateway VM, it's being encrypted using SSL. Right. Any questions, any doubts regarding the storage gateway? No worries, Anita. Any questions, any doubts you guys have? No questions, no doubts? We can take a small break of 15 minutes. Once we come back, we're going to discuss the CloudFront, which is a content delivery network. Raghureddy, I already have shared the Google link multiple times. So it's nothing for that. It is applicable for the assignments. The whole drive has been, the folder has been shared. I'm not sure whether you're able to access it or not. Sure, I'll just let me share the link right now. Hang on one second, please. Kamesh is saying, what's the percentage of question that comes from the topic? I would say just 1 or 2. Just one question will come from the storage gateway, nothing much about it. You can expect somewhere around 1 question, something like that. Most of the topics that come from the storage perspective is from the EBS and from the S3. If I talk about the storage options, most of the questions come from the EBS and the S3. Okay. So I've copied and pasted the URL for the Google Drive, so you guys can access the same. Okay. Subhajit, if you're not able to access the content, so you can just give me your email address. Kamesh had drag and drop this PPT to the drive at the end of the session. Subhajit, you can give me your email address so that I can add you to the drive, just in case if you're not able to see the contents. Okay, it's showing up. Great. All right. So let's do one thing. We can take a small break of 50 minutes so you guys can refresh yourself. Once you come back, we're going to discuss our CloudFront, which is a quite important topic from the examination perspective. All right. So let's take a break. Thank you. Welcome back. I guess all people are back now. Now we're going to discuss our next topic, that is CloudFront, which is a content delivery network within the AWS. Now you might have heard about Akamai. It is also a kind of a third-party content delivery network. It's the same thing that we can use or leverage. Amazon CloudFront. Now, the Amazon CloudFront is a web service that speeds up the distribution of your static and your dynamic web content. For example, .html, .css, .php, and image files to the end users. It delivers your content through a worldwide network of data centers called edge locations. And these edge locations are the collections of servers and geographically dispersed data centers where the CloudFront caches the copies of your objects. So we have the edge locations, and the CloudFront caches the copies of our objects in the servers that are placed in our edge locations across the globe. Now, the purpose of the CloudFront is to speed up the distribution of your content by routing each user request to the edge location that can best serve your content. Typically, this is the CloudFront edge location that provides the lowest latency. The edge locations are normally called as point of presence, and they're scattered across the globe. Now, why we need the CloudFront? If you can recall, during our first or second session, we have discussed that, but I will just re-emphasize the concept. Hang on 1 second. Okay. Now, this is a map where we have all the availability zones and the regions located. Now, why we need the CloudFront? For example, you are a US-based company. Today, you launch a US-based company, and you decide that, okay, this is the web server that you would be launching in the Oregon region. Okay, so you decide that, okay, let's launch a web server in the premises of Oregon. Now, you can see that there's so many customers coming up from Russia, from Africa, from other parts of the globe. Now, there are two ways. Either you can duplicate your infrastructure, which is a costly option, or what you can do is, for example, over here, let's suppose somewhere around near Beijing, you think that there's so many customers coming up. You access your website, and the customers who will be accessing the websites from a far distant location from other continents, it is quite obvious that they will experience something called latency, because they will experience or they will complain about the slowness of the website, because the person who's in the United States, he will get a faster access as compared to the person who is sitting in some other continent. So what we do is, as a workaround, we pick an edge location nearby to the user's locations. For example, if our user are somewhere in Russia, so we pick some of the edge locations over there, or in Africa. So what happens in that case is that we copy over the content, only the content, and save that in the edge location, so that even if the user is able to browse a website, he is able to get the content that's being saved in the edge locations. Now, what are the contents I'm talking about? These can be any contents. Most likely, you will use the CloudFront to deliver your static contents or dynamic content. For example, if I go to the site Amazon.com, all these files, all these, I would say, pictures, the pics, these are all the contents that I can have the CloudFront save in the nearest location. So it might be that this entire Amazon.com website is being hosted in United States region. However, the contents, these picture files, I can retrieve that from the nearest edge location. Okay. So this somehow gives high level of performance, and I can say that it gives a good experience of satisfaction to the customers, even though they are located far off distance location and they're trying to access your website. Okay. Now we'll see that how in actuality the CloudFront can help us to deliver the content across the globe. Now we have something called origin servers. Now origin server is a core component within the CloudFront delivery. The origin server is from where the CloudFront gets our files for the distribution from the CloudFront edge locations all over the world. So origin server can be either your S3 bucket, it can be either your EC2 instance, or it can be either your external HTTP server. Okay, it can be either of these three. So you can use the origin server to store your content, and that content will be further distributed to all the edge locations across the globe. Kuram is saying your question is the edge location it's physical? Of course, it's physical. How the Amazon Web Services claim the ownership of an edge location if it's not physically located? It's physically located, Kuram. It's physically located. The edge locations, I actually have discussed that before, but let me just re-emphasize that. If you just go to the global infrastructure site, you can see a detailed list of edge locations. So just click on see the detailed list of offerings at all AWS locations. Now these are not owned by Amazon Web Services, but these are partnered data centers. You can see over here, these are partnered data centers. Okay, where the Amazon Web Services, they provide these three different services: CloudFront, Route 53, and Web Application Firewall. So we discussed the Route 53 in our previous week. Even the DNS servers are being placed in these physical edge locations that are not owned by Amazon Web Services, but these are the partner data centers. Okay. So what is HTTP means? Any kind of external web server. Kamesh, your question is how dynamic content can work with edge locations. We'll discuss that. We'll discuss that, Kamesh. Because dynamic content, we can update our content after some time. We'll discuss that because we have to update our TTL in that case. We'll discuss that. Now, let's go back to our PPT slide. Now, once we define our origin server, it can be either our S3 bucket, our EC2 instance, or an external HTTP web server. We upload the objects or the data to our origin server. After that, we create something called CloudFront distribution. Now, CloudFront distribution is the exact configuration that works at the backend. Okay. From the CloudFront distribution perspective, the CloudFront tells that which origin server to get your file from. when the users request a file through your website or application. So you can say the CloudFront distribution lets the CloudFront know that which is the origin server from where you need to get the content and what are the updates stored on that origin server. So the CloudFront distribution contains the entire information about your origin server and the edge locations. Because you have to define certain price classes depending upon the edge locations that you choose. CloudFront sends your distributions configuration to all its edge locations. So once you configured something called CloudFront distribution, this configuration is being pushed to all the edge locations. As you develop your website or application, you use the domain name that CloudFront provides for your URLs. So as we create this CloudFront distribution, we will get a domain name that the CloudFront will provide us. That domain name, we will use that while creating a website or application. Optionally, you can configure your origin server to add headers to your files. The headers indicate how long you want the files to stay in the cache in the CloudFront edge locations. So you define something called TTL, or time to live, which means you would decide that after how much time your content would get updated and be saved in your edge location. We'll see that in the configuration. Okay. We'll discuss this diagram later on. So let's shoot back to the Mammoth console, and we go to CloudFront right now. And this will take us to the CloudFront dashboard. Right now, we just click on Create a Distribution over here. Now, there are two types of delivery methods for your content. The first one is called the web delivery method. What do you mean by that? Web delivery method means that you want to speed up the distribution of your static and dynamic content over the protocols or over the HTTP or HTTPS. So if you want to distribute your content over the HTTP or HTTPS protocol, in that case, you will go with the web delivery method. In that case, your origin server can be either your S3 packet, it can be an EC2 instance, or it can be an external HTTP web server, anything like that. The other type of delivery method that you can go for is called RTMP, that stands for Real-Time Media Protocol. So if you want to distribute your streaming media like we have in the YouTube, in that case, you will use the RTMP as your preferred delivery method. It is for the live streaming of the videos. So in our example, I'll go with the web delivery method because I just want to speed up the distribution of my content over the HTTP and the HTTPS. So I click on Get Started. And from here, we will just configure our CloudFront distribution. First thing first, I have to define either my S3 bucket or the load balancer. So I don't have the bucket created as of now, so let me just create a bucket real quick. I'm just opening the S3 Mammoth console. So I think I'll create bucket right now and let's name it as CF Lab. S3, and I choose my region and click on Create. Now, let me just refresh the page over here. And now I can choose a bucket that is created. Now my bucket name is caf-lab-history. The domain name s3.amazon.aws.com gets appended automatically. Or I can choose my load balancer. So I just go with the S3 bucket as of now. The origin path means that is there any folder that I can choose within this bucket for where I want to get the content, or I should be able to get the content from the entire S3 bucket. So I'll just go with this one, the top one. It will automatically populate the origin ID. You don't have to change that. The restrict bucket access, I would choose to no. We don't have to define anything in the origin custom headers, and scroll down. In the default cache behavior settings, we have to define the viewer protocol policy, which means that what's the policy being used by your viewers who will be viewing your website. So either you can go with HTTP and HTTPS, or you can redirect your HTTP site to HTTPS, or you can go with the HTTPS only. So I just go with HTTP and HTTPS. Allowed HTTP method, get head options, get head options put post patch delete. If I could go with get head, I can just the viewers can only view the content. The last option, get head options put post patch delete. The users can view the content, they can upload the content, push the content from their side, like we have on the Facebook. Okay, so I just go with the get head from which allow users to only see the content. Now, I go to object caching. I need to customize that. Now, this means that for how long the copies of your content will stay at the edge location, post which they will expire, and they will try to retrieve the new content from your origin server. For example, let's suppose if this is my edge location and this is my S3 bucket. So after 24 hours by default, the edge location can ask for the new content from the S3 bucket. Now you can see over here the value that you can see, it says 86,400 seconds. If you just open the calculator, so it's 24 hours into 60 minutes into 60 seconds, which amounts to 86,400 seconds. So by default, the cached copy of a content gets saved at the edge location for 24 hours. The maximum is 365 days. You can increase or decrease these values depending upon your requirement. Rest options you don't have to change as of now. Smooth streaming would be set to no because you're not streaming any media. And now this is quite important. Distribution settings, price class. Depending upon where your users are located and to which edge locations you want to distribute the content, you have to choose the continents. Because the more continents you choose, the more number of copies of your contents will be distributed, the more you have to pay. So if you go with the all edge locations, all the edge locations that's being under the AWS hood will get the copy of your content. But if you think that it will not make any sense because your customers are in US, Canada, and Europe, or most probably they're in US, Canada, Europe, or Asia, you can go for any one of these two on the top. So I just go with the top one, okay, to bring down my cost of the distribution. And the rest options, you don't have to change anything over here. You can also enable the logging for the bucket so that if anything happens with the CloudFront, you get the notification or it saves your logs. But that's not necessary as of now. So this is about the entire configuration of your CloudFront distribution. So once you scroll down, you have to choose the distribution state as enabled or disabled. If I click on enable and click on create distribution, it would come into effect immediately and start copying over the content to the edge location. But if I choose as disabled and click on create distribution, in that very case, it will be disabled. It will be created, but it will not be active. Okay, it will not come into action. So with all these settings that I've chosen as of now, and click on create distribution. So this creates my CloudFront distribution from scratch. And you can see that this is my CloudFront ID, this one. And if you just click on that, this is the domain name that I will be using to develop my application, so that if anyone who visits my website wants to retrieve the content will be retrieved from the edge location, and the edge location will get the content from the S3 buckets or the instances running at the backend. Okay, and I can add more origin service from here. Also, I can perform the restrictions. For example, I can just go to restrictions and I can hit edit, where I can restrict my content. I can blacklist a few countries so that they can't see my content. For example, in few countries, the content that I want to showcase on my website, it might be blocked or illegal. So I can choose any one of these countries and blacklist them so that they can't see the contents on my website. Okay. So that's about the CloudFront. Now, there's a very important concept that we're going to discuss right now, and it's a very important from the examination perspective. Let's suppose that you have this origin server, which can be either your S3 bucket, an external HTTP web server, or it can be an EC2 instance. And these edge locations have a copy of your content. They have got the content from the origin server. Now, in an ideal situation over here, the users, they ask for the content, and the edge location presents the content to all these users. There can be a scenario where these users ask for the content, but the edge location is clueless. It does not possess the content that these users are asking for. So what happens in that case is that the edge location will contact the origin server saying, "Hey origin server, do you have the copy of the content that these users are asking for?" The origin server will say, "Yes, of course, I will have the content. I have the content stored in my cache memory." The origin server will give the data to the edge location, and the edge location will stream the data directly to the users. In the meantime, the edge location will save the copy of the content in its cache memory, so that in the future, if any user asks for the same content, the edge location can very well present the content to the user without contacting the origin server again. This is a sure shot question that comes up on the certification. Once we discuss the questions, I will show you that question. Okay. So, in a situation where the edge location does not have a copy of the content, it contacts the origin server, gets the content, stream it directly to the end users, and keeps a copy of the content for the future purpose. Okay. So this completes our this CloudFront. Any questions, any doubts? I'm pausing for a few seconds. You can ask the questions if you have any. No questions, no doubts? So the question is there a restriction of the size of the edge location cache storage? No, there's no restriction. But yes, the more data you store, the more you have to pay. Quite as simple. Okay. Okay. So this completes our storage and content delivery options. Elastic Cache is not important as of now because it is not being adopted by various companies because just 2 or 3 weeks ago it was in preview stage. Okay, so we'll skip this one. It's not important. So we have covered all our storage and content delivery options, including the EBS or the Elastic Block Store. Now the next topic that we're going to cover is the IAM. That's for Identity and Access Management. Actually, I just need to show you one setting and I need to hook up my cell phone to show the screen of it so that I can show you that how I can enable the MFA on this one. So I just pause for a few seconds. I need to switch over my cable and I'll be right back. Okay. All right, I'm back now. So let's discuss our next topic under security and identity. That's called the Identity and Access Management. In the short form, we also call it as IAM. IAM is a web service that enables the AWS customers to manage users and users' permissions in AWS. With IAM, you can centrally manage the user's security credentials, such as access keys, and permissions that control which AWS resources the users can access. You use the IAM to control that who can use your AWS resources. That comes under the authentication, and what resources they can use in what ways. That comes under the authorization. So through the IAM, you define that who are the administrators or architects who will be performing the day-to-day maintenance, deployment, or the automation task on your behalf, and what kind of access these people should have. That comes under the authorization. I'm sorry. Now, the first component of the IAM is called the users. An IAM user is an entity that you create in AWS that provides a way to interact with AWS. A primary use for IAM users is to give people you work with identities that they can use to sign in into the management console and to make requests to the AWS services. So these users are the actual users who would be managing your AWS architecture on your behalf. Groups. A group is a collection of IAM users, and groups let you specify the permissions for a collection of users, which can make it easier to manage the permissions for those users. For example, today I started an organization with just 10 people. For just 10 people or 10 users, it becomes fairly easy for me to manage these people's accounts and their permissions. So with respect to these people, I can very well manage their access levels, manage their accounts, so I will have the full transparency that what kind of access these people have. Now let's suppose from 10 people my organization grows to 100, and eventually it goes to thousands in few years. Now to manage the users or the accounts for these amount of people or such a great amount of people, it's a big task. So I can't go to individual access to the people who need more access than intended. Therefore, I create something called groups. What's a group? Group means that you create something called, you have a group for let's suppose you create a group for administrators. You hire the administrators in your company, so before that you create a group and you attach a policy so that this group administrator will have almost all the access to your resources. Once you hire Bob and Susan in your organization, you can assign them to the group. Okay? You can assign your users to the group. Now you have another group called developers. To this group called developers, you align certain policies. For example, you give the permissions to some development resources like CloudFront, Code Commit, Code Deploy, CloudFormation, Elastic Beanstalk, and all these kind of things. Once you attach the policies to the group and you hire individuals like Nate and Brad in your organization, you simply assign them to the group called developers. So as you hire more developers in your organization, you can simply assign them to the group so that all these people get the same level of permissions. In our third example, we have a group for testing professionals. We assign the policies for the right kind of resources, and then I hired Kathy and Alan and assigned them to the group. So in this way, it becomes quite easy for me to define the access rights and the permissions for different users in my organization. Okay. Role. A role is essentially a set of permissions that grant access to actions and resources in AWS. These permissions are attached to the role, not to an IAM user or group. Now, role is a quite important concept for us to understand. Role means that this allows two different features in your AWS architecture to access each other. For example, I may have this instance, this EC2 instance, and I want that this EC2 instance should get all the contents from the S3 bucket. The JPEG files, the HTML files, all those kind of things. So in order to facilitate this kind of access permissions, I need to assign a role to this instance so that it can access the contents within the S3 buckets automatically at the back end on my behalf. Yesterday, if you can recall, we had done our something called cross-region application, where we have bucket created in one region of Northern California and another bucket in North Virginia. So the North California bucket is a source bucket, whereas the North Virginia is a destination bucket. So if we copy over any content in the source bucket, it gets replicated for the destination bucket. Even though we have enabled this thing, we created an IAM role to facilitate this thing. Because without the role, we can't give the permissions to both these buckets to sync together. So roles are not assigned to users or to the groups. They are assigned to the features or applications running in your AWS architecture so that they can talk to each other, they can send or receive API calls to each other without any restrictions or hassles. So I guess by this point of time, you have a fair understanding between the users, groups, and roles. Any questions, any doubts? Because I've seen most of the people, they get confused in the concept of role. Just in case if you have doubts, let me know. I'm just pausing for a few seconds. So basically the question is, what is the use of the group as no option for restriction to be given a user level? So we also give the restriction at the user level and at the group level. We apply the permissions both at the user level and the group level. The difference is that if we have multiple users to be assigned the same level of permissions, we assign the permission to the group and then assign all the people under the same group. So in that case, we don't have to go to the individual user level and apply the restriction one by one. So you can apply the restrictions both at the user level and at the group level. I will show you. Okay, so let's shoot back to the member console right now. Now, this is the IAM dashboard. I go to the users right now, and I am not sure that I have some users created. Okay, let's remove that. So let's remove the roles that I created beforehand. So I didn't script from scratch. Okay. Now, I just go to the dashboard right now, and I click on users over here. Now, on the top, we just click on create new users to create new users from scratch. So I name this users as John, Steve, Michael, Rita, and Chris. So these are the 5 users in my company that I've recruited, and in one single shot you can create up to 5 different users. Now one thing you have to keep in mind, you can't create duplicate users in your IAM dashboard. This is also a question that comes up in the certification. If I type in Rita again and just hit create, it says remove duplicate user names. You can't have 2 users with the same user ID. Okay? So I will check mark this option, generate an access key for each user, and click on create. Now I just go to show security credentials, and I can see the access key ID and the secret access key ID that can be used by John, Steve, Michael, Rita, and Chris. They can use this access key ID and secret access key to access the resources using some CLI or third-party API tool like Cloudberry Lab. I can click on download the credentials to download the CSV file, because once I exit out by hitting on close, I can see this user's ID access key but not the secret access key. So once I download everything in the Excel sheet, I can save that for my future purpose. Okay. Just opening it right now. You can see that I can save that, this access key and secret access key, on my desktop. Now I have the users created, but they are of no use as of now. Why? I haven't defined their passwords. I haven't defined that what kind of access these people should have. I start with Chris. Once I click on Chris, I go to security credentials, and this is the access key. I can't see the secret access key. That's why I have downloaded the Excel sheet. Once I scroll down, I need to click on manage password over here for the username Chris, and either I can just go for an auto-generated password, or I can assign a custom one. So I just go with the custom one and define the password. I can check mark this option, which means require the user to create a new password at next sign in. So I can skip this option and click on apply. Now Chris has the password. He has never used it because he has not logged in. Now I have to apply the permissions. The permissions are applied through IAM in the form of policies. So once I go to the permissions tab, it says attach policy. I go over there, and you can see that these are different access rights for different type of applications or the features are running in your AWS cloud. For example, you can see which applications or which kind of features you can have as read-only access, which kind of applications or features you can give as full access. Okay. So I will give the administrator access to Chris, which means that, logically speaking, Chris should have almost all the access on my AWS resources. He has a right to create, delete, remove, modify the resources inside my AWS architecture. So once I check mark this policy, I click on attach policy at the bottom right corner, and this policy has been attached. This means that now that Chris has the administrator access and is good to go. Now, before I can have the Chris log into his account, I'll go to my dashboard and provide this link to Chris, saying, "Hey Chris, this is the this is the link that you'll be using to access your AWS resources. You can customize this link. For example, I can just click on get customize, and I can type in my company name, something like that. For example, let's type in @reka-IAM and click on yes create. So I can modify this link from my side and give this link to Chris so that he can use the same to sign on to his AWS Management Console and access my resources. So I'll copy the thing from Chris' perspective, from Chris' behalf, open my Safari browser and paste it over here. Now, you can see that it already took my account ID @IAM that I just selected over there. The user ID will be Chris, and the password I just type in. I click on sign in. So now the Chris should be able to sign in to his account. And you can see at the top right corner, Chris @IAM. This is the account ID that shows up on the top. Now, one thing is we have to notice right now. Even though Chris has the admin access, he can do anything. He can create, delete, or modify any one of the resources on this entire management console. However, Chris cannot access the account information or the billing and the cost management. This account information and the billing and cost management is with the master or root account. This account that I used is called the master or root account, which contains the credit card or the debit card information. And these accounts that I've created, these are called the sub-account. This Chris, John, Michael, Rita, Steve, these are sub-accounts, and the account from which I created these sub-accounts is called the master or root account. So this account information or the billing and the cost management information is only with our root or master accounts. So if I go to billing and cost management on behalf of Chris, you would see that he shouldn't have any access to the billing information. It says you are not authorized to perform this operation. The access is denied. Okay, so this thing you have to keep in mind. The billing information is only being accessed by the master or root account holder. No other sub account can access the billing or the cost management or the account information. Okay, so this is how I apply the permissions at the individual user level. Now let's discuss the groups. I go to the groups on the left side in navigation pane and start creating 3 groups. So the first group that I will create would be for the administrators. And I click on Next step. It has the policy as administrator access. Click Next step and click on Create Group. So my first group has been created. I create another group for my developers. I click on Next step, and I want to just attach the policies for the developing resources. So for example, code commit, I will full access, code deploy, I will give full access, cloud formation, I will give full access, read-only access, Elastic, Beanstalk, and I will give the full access. So I have chosen few policies depending upon to which resources I want to access or give this developer group access to. So I choose all the policies, hit Next step, and you can see these are the different policies I'm attaching right now to my developers group. I click on Create Group, and my group called Developers is being created. And again, if I just go over there, these are the permissions I've applied to the policies. I go to group again, and I create a new group that is for the graduate trainees. So my company has hired few campus freshers, and they are in the process of getting knowledge transfer, or they are in the training mode. So I don't want to give the full access to these people because they don't have any knowledge as of now. I don't want that any one of these graduate trainees should mess around with my infrastructure. So I just create a new group for GTEs, and I go ahead and click on next step. I give the read-only access only to few resources. That's it. Only the read-only access. I will not allow these people to create or delete any one of the resources. So I just give read-only access to few resources, hit next step, and click on create group. So this group GTEs I would just give to the freshers or to the campus freshers who have been recruited in the recent past. Okay, so that's how you create the groups. Now, how you can assign the groups or how you assign the users to the groups. For example, I open developers as my group, go to users, and add users to the group. For example, I add John and Michael to the group called developers and click on add users. So now John and Michael are added to the group called developers, and they will have all the permissions through the policies that I've attached to this group. I go to the group again, and I choose GTEs, and I click on add users to the group, and I will choose Rita and Steve as my GTEs and add them to this group. So now Rita and Steve will have the read-only access depending upon the policies that I've attached to this group called GTEs. So that's how we attach or we associate the users under the same hood called the group. So whatever policies I've applied to the group, the same policies or the permissions will be applied to the users added to it. All right. Kuram, your question is roles cannot be assigned to a user group. Is this for the applications? Which application? Kuram, it's for the features and applications like EC2, S3 buckets, and so on. I will show you. Kuram is saying, what's a group ARN? Amazon resource name on summary page. This is actually what happens is that some of the resources are being recognized using ARN, that stands for Amazon resource name. Okay, just in case if you want to create some policies, you have to choose this Amazon resource name. Okay. Now regarding the roles, I guess the groups and the users it's clear as of now. Let's see the role. Let's take an example where I want the EC2 instance to access my S3 bucket in my account. For that, I need to create a role, an IAM role, and assign it to this instance. So what I would do, I'll just create a role from scratch. So I just click on create new role on the top, and I just name it as access to S3 buckets. And now I click on next step. Now I would say that which service I want to choose that will allow to call the AWS services on my behalf. I would choose the Amazon EC2 because I want that the EC2 instances in my account should access the S3 resources or S3 buckets from my behalf. I can also use a role for the cross-account access. Okay, so I go to the service roles and I click on select over here. Now I want that my instances should access the S3 bucket. So I just type in S3 at the top and choose S3 full access. Click on next step, click on create role, and my role it's been created. Now if I want to launch an instance from scratch, so I click on EC2, I click on Launch Instance, choose an AMI. I go with the t2.micro as my instance type. And the third step where I have to configure the instance details, I get this role while launching this instance. So this instance will have access to the roles, to the buckets inside my AWS architecture. Okay. So this instance, while I apply the role to it, it will have access to all the S3 buckets inside my account or the architecture. Yesterday we have seen the roles application while we define the cross-regional application for the S3 buckets. Okay, so that's how you create the roles and apply them. Policies, we already have seen the policies. We can create our own custom-based policy. So I can create a new policy, and I can use the policy generator, and I can select any service, and I can choose different actions and create my own custom-based policy from here. Okay. I guess we have a question right now. So what your question is that if a user is added into two groups, one group has access to S3 buckets and one group denies access to S3 bucket. In this case, does the user have access to S3? First thing first, Subhash, I'm not sure whether I can add two groups to the same user. So if I go to groups right now, and if let's suppose that this user, Chris, let's go back to John. Let's go to groups right now. I have Michael added to my group called developers. Right. Let me add Michael to a second group right now. That is my GTEs. Okay. And let me see whether the previous group has Michael or not. So I go to the group again, go to developers. So Michael is there. So you can add two different groups to the same user, right? You can apply that. Now your question is that in one group you have denied the S3 access, and in the other you have allowed that. I would say that there would be a contradiction where the user may or may not be able to access resource, because there is a concept that either you can apply the policy at the individual user level, or you apply that at the group level. So the policy that you apply at the individual level always supersedes the group level. Okay, but frankly speaking, I'm not quite sure that if you deny the same operation in one group and deny the operation, allow the operation in the second group, and add both the groups for the same user, what will happen? Okay, I'm not sure what will happen, because logically speaking, it would be a chaos or confusion, because in one group we are allowing the access to the resource, in another group we're denying that. So I don't have the answer right now as of now. We can do one thing. We can just try this one out in this session. So I will allow, let me just create a group right now where I'm giving access to S3 bucket, and I give S3 full access to this group. Okay. Now I add Chris to this group, right? Now I create another group where I deny access to S3 bucket. So over here, I will choose any one of the applications like DynamoDB, and it doesn't have access to the S3 bucket, which means it is somehow denying that. I create this group. Now I go to my user called Chris, remove this policy, okay, and I go to the groups again. In access to S3 bucket, I already have, the Chris is already added. Now in deny to S3 bucket, I will add them again because it's denied over here, right? Because in this group, I haven't given him access to the S3 bucket. So now Chris is a part of two groups. S3 full access, and in the other group there's no access to the S3 bucket. So if I go back to the management console and sign in on behalf of Chris, so I open the IAM. So I copy and paste this thing right now. And type in the user ID and password. So I will see whether the Chris will be able to access the S3 bucket or not. So I go to the S3 on behalf of Chris. So Chris is able to access my S3 buckets, which means that if I haven't allowed something in a group and attach another group giving access to that thing, that group will overwrite and will give access to that resource. Okay, I think this answers your question. And one more thing, that there is no rule for denying to any resource. If you browse through the policies as of now, it doesn't deny you. It is just that whether you want to give the full access or the read-only access. Okay. Kamesh is saying, but Chris is administrator role. Kamesh, I removed the administrator access from Chris. If I just go to the Chris right now, I removed that policy. You can see over here. It doesn't have admin access now. Okay. Subhash, your question is where these users and group reside. On the IAM, they have a, you can say it's a separate database that maintains your users and groups. Okay. Okay. So let's move forward now. We on the left side we have something called account settings. Now the account settings can you can also call it as a password policy. It's a set of rules that you apply to account. Now in your organization you might have seen that whenever you choose a password, you get some kind of messages that or instructions that you can't create a password which is too short. It should be at least 8 characters long. It should have at least a capital letter, at least a number, at least a special character. You can't reuse the passwords that you've used before. So these are certain kind of policies that you can go for, which means it requires at least one uppercase, one lowercase, at least one number. These are the password policies that you can impose on your account holders, or you can say sub account holders. Okay, you can define the minimum password length and so on from here. So but your question is it possible to migrate the users and groups from other directory to AWS IAM? Yes, Subhajit. It's quite I would say it's possible. You can migrate your LDAP users from other directories to the IAM. You can do that. All right. Next, we have credential report. You can download the entire report of the policies, groups, users created. Okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to discuss is called the multi-factor authentication. Now, I need to open my Mobism. I need to hook up my cell phone right now. Hang on one second, please. Multi-factor authentication is a second layer of authentication that you can use to, or your sub-account holders can use to get access to their resources or accounts. So, hang on one second, please. Let me just open this in the Chrome browser. Just give me 1 second. Let me just hook up my Android phone with this PC. Kamesh is saying, is user can be restricted to a region or easy? I would say no, Kamesh, because the users are restricted to the resources, not the regions or easies. So you can perform the restrictions based upon the resources. It can't be done based upon the regions or availability zones. Okay. Hang on 1 second, please. Somehow my password is not working. I need to reset it. Just give me 1 second. I'm sharing the screen for a few seconds. I'm almost done. Okay, so just give me 1 second. Okay, we're connected, and I guess you can see my phone screen. Now, why I've attached that, because we use the our Android phone to enable the multi-factor authentication, or MFA. Now, this MFA, or the multi-factor authentication, is a method to include a second step towards the authentication. For example, I go to Chris right now, and I go to the security credentials, and over here it says multi-factor authentication device is set to no. So I click on manage MFA device. Now there are two types of MFA devices I can choose. Either I can go for virtual MFA or the hardware. Now let me go to this link, and I can see what are the supported softwares and the devices. Now, if you go with a virtual MFA device, you have to have an Android, Windows, or on the iOS phone. You can also purchase the key fobs, the RSA keys that we use in the organizations, the display cards, or we can go with the SMS multi-factor authentication. Now, this virtual MFA device is free and effective. You don't have to pay even a single penny for its setup. If you want to set up this virtual MFA on your sub-account's phone, these are the softwares need to be downloaded on your sub-account holders' phones, if they are using Android, iPhone, Windows Phone, or BlackBerry. These softwares are available on the Play Store or on the iOS for free. Okay? They're not charges for that. And also, you can install the barcode scanner for the first time. Okay. Now, once you download this software on your account holder's smartphone, it's time for you to enable the multi-factor authentication. Why you need to do that? Because this will generate a 4-digit PIN on his phone, and through his or her phone, once they get the PIN, that PIN can be entered during the sign-in procedure. So I've chosen the virtual MFA device right now and hit on next step, and click on next step right now. Now I would take my account holder's phone, that is Chris' phone, for example, over here, and let me just show my phone screen. So I will go to, on the top you can see over here, Google Authenticator, right to AWS Console. Now this Google Authenticator already has an account added, so let me just delete that. And now I click on Begin Setup, just at the below you can see over here, Begin Setup, and I click on Scan the barcode. Now, from the Chris phone, I will scan this barcode, and once this barcode gets scanned and detected, it will automatically pick up the Chris account and give me the PIN code. Now this PIN code will change after a gap of 30 seconds. So now we have a new PIN code, 602563. I go to the IAM and type the following code, 602563. Now I go back to my smartphone again, to the Chris smartphone, and wait for another PIN so that this MFA can be implemented and applied on his account and his smartphone. So the next code I get is 677375. 677375, and I click on Activate Virtual MFA. So now the Chris smartphone has been hooked up and the MFA device was successfully associated. So I've associated the Chris MFA account with his smartphone. Now, in the future, if Chris wants to sign on, he will open the same he will just use the same URL. This one. Let's copy this one, and I open the Safari. Just paste it over here. And Chris will type in his user ID, that is Chris, his password. And once I click on sign in, it will ask for the MFA code. He will check his cell phone. The code is getting is 583076. 583076, and click on submit. And now Chris would be able to sign on. So the code refreshes after 30 seconds. Okay, so for each sign on, he will get a new code. So this ensures an extra layer of or additional layer of security. You can say it's a second level of authentication. So that's how you enable the multi-factor. Now, as per the AWS best practice, it is always recommended that you enable the multi-factor authentication for your root account or the master account. This is what the AWS security white paper says. Okay, that's how you enable the multi-factor authentication for your sub accounts. And optionally, you can follow the same procedure for the root or the master account. One more thing. Let's suppose that if any of the user is not physically located nearby my place, might be, let's suppose John. John is located in some other state. Might be I'm in Delhi, he's in Bangalore. So how I can get the smartphone and enable the multi-factor authentication? In that case, I click on Manage MF Device, and I will send him this code. Show secret key for manual configuration. So I'll send him this code over the email. He will use this code to sign on. So if I show you my phone again, let me delete the Chris account. So if Michael wants to sign on or set up, I can go with the second one which says a code that will app will generate for you, or I will say click on begin setup, and I will click on enter the key provided, the second option. And over here, I will type in my account name, or Michael the account account name, and the key that I will email to him. This key. Okay. So through this key, he can activate the multi-factor authentication, even though I don't have the physical access on this smartphone. All right. So this completes our IAM, or identity and access management. We're going to discuss the encryption keys in the next week because it's a bit lengthy topic. Any questions, any doubts? So today we covered a fair amount of topics. We covered the Glacier, Snowball, Storage Gateway, CloudFront, and IAM. In the next week, we'll cover the KMS and all our database options. Okay, and we'll cover the CloudFormation, CloudWatch, and rest all the management tools. So that's the agenda for our next week. For today's week, for today's assignment, I will let you know what you have to do. So you have to perform for the CloudFront. Okay. So I'm giving you this lab session that you have to perform for the CloudFront, through which you have to host a static website. And you will see that how you can use the CloudFront to deliver your static or the dynamic web content to the edge location. It's a 6-page document or the lab session that you have to go through. This is the code that you'll be using. Okay. So I've just included the screenshots. Venkat, RDS we will do the next week. We haven't covered the RDS, we'll cover the next week. RDS comes under database options. So as I said before, we'll cover all our database options, including RDS, DynamoDB, Redshift, the next week. We'll do that, okay? So I'm copying over this document and I'm pasting it over here. This is our session 8. Let me give you for the IAM as well. Okay. Just give me 1 second, please. Okay. So I'm giving you one lab document for the IAM. Okay. So these will get synced after. You can see that after some time. So that's it for today. Any questions, any doubts before we can wind up? So I guess in the next week we can complete our codes because we have left with database options, management tools, SNS, and CloudFormation, Beanstalk, OpsWork. So let's see if we can cover our course the next week, or we can take an additional session the next week after that. You want the PPT, Kamish? Hang on 1 second. Actually, I don't have the PPTs. It's scattered somewhere. I give it the front for the storage gateway. Start with this one. Okay, and I'll put it out as well. Copy this one, and I pasted the slides. Okay. No worries. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right. So I've copied over the detailed PUD slides. Any questions, any doubts before we can wind up? No? So today we covered our Glacier, Import Export Snowball, Storage Gateway, CloudFront, and IAM. So please practice, please revise the concepts that we have discussed in this class. Okay. Hey, good night, bye. Good night, Subhash, bye-bye. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for your time and patience. We'll meet in the next week, which means the coming Saturday, at the same time, and we will continue with our conversation. All right. So goodbye. Bye-bye.